It's interesting, we talk about the cloud. So I've sat through 2 days of presentations about the cloud here, and I must be one of the most disappointed people ever in the history of being disappointed. I think what is it? It must be 7, 8, 9 years now since we started talking about the cloud, and yet every presentation I go to is still about infrastructure. You have this person complaining about somebody else's SLAs. You have this person saying my virtual machine integration is better than his. This person saying you should be using products for your network, not something that's been built from open source. And it's just boring. I'm sick to death of it. And I honestly believe, and I have done for a long time, that cloud is a much bigger issue than that. Infrastructure is just worthless. I'm just going to put it out there, okay? If I'm a business person, I want to deliver value. There are things I want to achieve. Paying somebody a lot of money to come in, to mess around with servers, to configure things, and then when I've spent all of that money, I still don't have anything. It's just nothing. It's just sitting there. And then I have to spend a load more money to build things on top, and then it costs me a fortune to pay people to keep it all running. It just seems crazy that after, 10 years of talking about the cloud, we haven't got any further than that. So I'm quite a strong believer in, if you want to understand the future, it's always a good idea to kind of go backwards and see what parallels you could find in history. And so I did a lot of research, probably about 6 months ago, for an article I wrote around containerization and what happened in the physical supply chain. And it's a really interesting story, because if you go back to before containerization, it was really, really hard to shift goods from one place to another. Everything was done, people packed things however they liked. They had to be loaded and unloaded off trains, onto lorries, onto boats. There were specialized skills at every point, because, you had to be, if you were loading a boat, you had to be able to take all of these different break bulk goods, fit them into a ship in such a way to make sure that it didn't turn over upside down if there was a storm or something. So there were multiple technologies, multiple roles, and it was all based around the industries that had grown up over a long period of time. And customers, if they did want to ship something, they had to have a whole organization, a whole back office organization that spent all of their time understanding shipping tables, railway tables, how they were going to pack stuff, who was going to turn up at which location to move things from one mode of transport to another. It was just a complete mess. And so effectively what happened was that everybody consolidated their manufacturing all in one place. There was no concept of a global supply chain. The whole thing was just too unreliable. It was slow, goods got stolen, ships called at lots of little ports, the tides might affect when something would be picked up, it might stand on a dock for months. So, the genius really for me, when you look into it, of the containerization pioneers, so like Malcolm McLean, was that he stood back and he said, well, what are people trying to achieve here? They just want to move some goods from place A to place B. They don't give a shit about all of these different people performing different roles. They don't care about the infrastructure and the technology that's needed to do that. They just want to put stuff in a box and have it reliably delivered somewhere else in some other part of the world. And so there we go. And so really what containerization did was incredible. You went from a situation where it was very difficult to integrate things across locations to a situation in which everything was realigned. The whole business of shipping was reimagined from the beginning. And so trucks, trains, container ships, cranes, ports, everything got bigger, everything got integrated, everything was easily switched from one mode of transport to another. And so you went from a situation that it was unreliable, it was unsafe, it was inefficient, it was just impractical, to a situation in which it was fast to ship things from one place to another. It was completely reliable. You didn't have to understand anything about the process of moving that box from one place to another. It was completely scalable, and everything was automated. So all of those people who spent all of their time just doing small jobs like carrying things from one place to another to change a mode of transport or packing a ship, all of that just disappeared. It all just got automated. It all got much more scalable. And really, there were a number of things that are interesting that flowed from that. One is that there was a piece of research lately, because containerization is really understudied in my opinion. It's a really interesting era of business history. And there was this kind of emergence of this logistics platform, as I call it. It's almost like the first business platform that came to exist that allowed globalization to happen in the physical supply chain. When they did a study recently, over 20 years from 1970 to 1990, across 22 industrialized countries, there was a 790% increase in bilateral trade, so basically globalization, as a result of containerization. So they factored out everything else, and they said, as a direct result of containerization, suddenly there's a 790% increase in the goods that are moving around. And that had some additional impacts. Basically, organizations were able to rely on delivery, so people were able to become much more specialized. Countries who previously were not involved in global supply chains were able now to build things in low-cost locations. They were able to ship things easily. The product companies who assembled all of these specialized pieces were able to build lean business models. They could do just-in-time manufacturing. And so you went from a situation that everything was done in a place close to where the consumers were to a point where today, you have supply chains of hundreds of partners delivering things from all over the world that come together to be aggregated finally. And this is kind of a massive change. And so for me, when I look at IT today, I see the business of shipping before containerization. Okay? I see a business person who wants an outcome. And then I see a whole set of fragmentation. I see people who know how to do servers, networks, storage, middleware, databases. None of them work together. There's all these handover points where they say, well, now I've done my bit, can you go and do your bit? It's all, you have to have this big back office of people that manage all of this stuff, even though it does nothing for your business. And ultimately, when you've done it all, it's really unreliable. You can't guarantee that if you want to scale this out to partners, if you want to take this out and share your IP with other companies, that it's going to work. And so today, for me, we're in this similar situation, teetering on the brink of what happened during containerization, where things like the web, like cloud, like mobility, like social, are giving us the tools. They've lowered the cost of doing transactions across organizations. And what we need now is a wholesale reimagining of what IT delivery is to enable people to take advantage of that connectivity, to create digital supply chains, to kind of specialize in their digital realm, to basically integrate with other people who deliver digital services, and to basically build much stronger value chains that are oriented around what consumers want, not around industries. So if I skip on one. So I guess that's what we're looking to do, really. And I think this is why I get so frustrated, is that very early on, I used to work in financial services, and there was a lot of work in the early 2000s to create XML schemas to basically allow business transactions to occur across back office product companies into kind of financial advisors and resellers. And so to me, it became relatively clear even then that the web was a way that you could transform the value chains of that industry. But what failed to happen is that, okay, fine, the web emerged and everybody said everything's going to disaggregate, everybody's going to specialize, that's the end of business as we know it. But the reality was that the underlying delivery platform wasn't there. So fine, you could move data easily from one place to another, but the ability to build the services that scalably allowed you to serve people asking you for that data just didn't exist. No, it was all put together in a bespoke way, kind of on a relatively shoestring budget. It wasn't multi-tenant. You just had your IT department knitting things together, much as people used to knit things together in order to ship things from one continent to another. And so I think probably around 2007, 2008, I was really excited. I thought, okay, we can see all of these emerging trends. We've got new ways of looking at business architecture in terms of business capabilities, how we can orchestrate different business capabilities within our enterprise architecture. We can use cloud to realize those business capabilities. We can use the web to share them with other people. That's basically what cloud is going to be. It's all going to be about specialization and business disaggregation. And then since 2007, all I've done is come to conferences like this and listen to people argue about infrastructure. And it drives me mental. I think we all need to go away from here, and rethink what we're about. Because if that's the best we can do as an industry, then we may as well just all give up because it's pointless. Infrastructure is valuable, obviously it is. You want to transition some of your old systems and run them somewhere else for a while. But it's not the fundamental reimagining of the whole IT delivery chain that is required to enable businesses to really take advantage of globalization in the digital realm. And so what we've been looking at really is, if you look at IT today, we've got a whole bunch of emerging trends that are quite exciting, they're quite interesting, you know. So we started off, people got personal computing, we've got a lot of connected devices now, mobile phones, smartwatches, health monitors, cloud services of every kind, infrastructure platforms, middleware platforms, applications. You've got social graphs. We know more about people and their relationships and their doings now than we ever have before. You know, you've got Internet of Things is becoming a big area, so you can have physical devices. You're digitizing the physical world. You know, not only are we digitizing the digital world, we're digitizing the physical world. And so we have opportunities to build value chains that span people, computers, cloud services, and the physical world. You know, the huge opportunities. And then all of this leaves a massive data trail behind it, where we can extract value. You know, we can find out from across all of these different things that are happening, you know, insights that allow us to improve the way that it all works. You know, so I get really annoyed about big data, actually. I'm quite an angry person today, so I'm going to apologize for that as well. But like, big data quite annoys me as well, because everybody says big data is such a fantastic thing. But it's meaningless, you know. It's just basically, it's pulling together the exhaust pipe of all of these other things that are happening. It's not a thing in its own right, you know. If anybody comes and says, buy big data, you should just slap them, because it's pointless. So what we're looking at is, if you look at IT today, there are a number of issues. I mean, fragmentation, so all of these things are exciting, but actually none of them work together. So it's really hard to get value from them. All of the skills that you need to build these kinds of new services are very technical. You need infrastructure specialists, you need developers, you need operational people. Now, all of these guys mean that the benefits of technology, the transformative benefits of technology, which could lead us to new scientific discoveries or improve the way society functions or deliver new specialized business models, the tools are just not in the hands of the broad range of people. They're all in the hands of a small number of people. And the irony is that, okay, we have some very talented technical people, but the ideas to solve all of these problems are in the head of other people who are smart in their specific domain of knowledge. And again, sorry, this is a little aside, but you see this a lot in kind of disruptions as well, where, I don't know if you've ever studied the innovation theories of Clayton Christensen, but you always see this situation where you have things that are very expensive, they are hard to access, you need to pay a lot for specialized people to do it, and then something comes along to flip the model and make it simple and make it available to everyone. And at that point, you know, whoever is running the old model collapses. You know, and again, I think this is another sort of sign, you know, beyond the experiences we can see in the physical supply chain. I think this is another kind of sign, a warning sign for all of us, if you like, that it's not about moving things from one physical space to another, but carrying on doing what we've always done. It really is, you know, a requirement to transform things completely. I mean, obviously IT is very expensive, and there are huge risks in doing all of these things yourself, all the way from the bottom to the top, every single time. So what we want to do really is, and what we think everybody should be focusing on, I guess, you know, this isn't really a presentation about Fujitsu, it's just really my ranting about what I think we should be trying to achieve as an industry. And so I think we need to be looking at how do we put the tools in the hands of the broadest number of people in order to accelerate the extraction of value from technology. So how do we enable people to build business processes more quickly, integrate their businesses more quickly, get value from data more quickly? You know, and that's all about modeling, it's about patterns, it's about simplification, it's about integrating things so that people don't have to do things that are not related to delivering the value. You know, we want to make it easier for people to integrate things. So all of these things are fantastic, but in and of themselves, that they don't provide the end-to-end value. So again, you know, we need a platform, much like logistics, that enables you to get the benefit without understanding anything of the implementation. We want to support people's specialization. And the other thing is, you know, that at the moment, even when technology ownership is such a pain in the arse, and to me, even moving from on-premise technology ownership to operating some infrastructure in the cloud, you're still patching that operating system, you're still managing all the middleware on it, you're still managing all the applications on it, and that costs a lot of money, it fails a lot, it's quite risky, and ultimately it's completely pointless. So again, what we want to do is say, we want to take all of these different bits of technology, we want to learn the lessons of containerization, and we want to deliver a platform that enables the broadest range of people to gain the value of technology. We don't want to sell people technology anymore. We want to sell people the benefits of technology. We want to allow them to model their business processes, model their applications, quickly capture data. You know, and all of the stuff that makes that happen is completely irrelevant to them. You know, it's all about how do I quickly capture, deliver, distribute and monetize my business IP, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Anything that gets in the way of that is just a waste of time. So this is the one where I think it's going to be 20 hours, so I better go on a bit faster. Sorry, why is this not working? There we go. So I think that just quickly, when you look at these kinds of, this kind of digital disaggregation, it is happening across a number of levels. So it's not true to say that everything is related to business specialization, because it's a progressive journey, okay? I mean, it's fine to buy some infrastructure, in the cloud and use it and augment what you already have. And it may or may not be a transitional model, but there's value in it. You may want to buy applications, maybe you're happy with the business processes you operate, maybe you're happy with the people you have, but you don't want to run the application anymore. You want to just outsource or buy SaaS to realize the transactional functions. You might want to go beyond that and say, well, some provider has created a composite business process. So they've taken a load of SaaS applications, they've built a best practice business process over that, and they will deliver that to you. It's not an area that you specialize in your business, but at the same time, it's important enough to you that you want to keep the people and you want to do the work. And then the final sort of level is to say, well, do you know what? I don't care about this at all. I don't want to have the infrastructure, the applications, the processes, or the people. I just want to buy the outcome from someone else. And ultimately, I think that's where 90% of the value is, but we don't have the infrastructure at the moment to deliver it. And that's where we think everybody should be focusing. And so I guess the challenge in these kind of new worlds is, how do you maintain continuity in these new sorts of digital value chains? We've got lots of different kinds of users. They're accessing our systems through all sorts of different channels. We've got new channels like APIs. We've got increasing amounts of information coming from the physical world. All sorts of different business models. Some people are going to invoice you. Some people you're going to subscribe to. Some people you're going to pay on a usage basis. How do you get a single view of that? How do you manage it? How do you aggregate it? How do you know how your supply chain is performing? And then finally, when you've got these multi-service value chains, how do you get reports on how they're performing? How do you manage the service levels from end to end across the whole lot? How do you manage version management? If your supplier changes a version of their service, how do you manage that? How do you transition from one version to another? So there are a whole load of questions, that you've got. Suddenly, integration is not an issue of, I've got a hybrid cloud, I've got some infrastructure on-premise, I've got some infrastructure off-premise. How do I orchestrate virtual machines between them? Fine, it's interesting, but that's not really what integration means in this new context. It doesn't even mean integrating SaaS together. It means my business is transforming itself into a digital organization, so I'm going to encode everything that I do as a digital service so that I can share that and monetize it with other people. And it's going to happen on multiple levels, so some of it's going to be infrastructure outsourced, some of it's going to be apps, some processes, some business. And then how do I manage this new organization that I've created that spans different technology layers, different partners, and do all of that in a cohesive way? There we go. So I think, integration is a massive word in this sort of context, because there are different levels of integration that you need to think about. So yes, there is technology integration within layers. So if you've got a business capability that consists of infrastructure, software, processes, and people, yes, you might want to build a hybrid infrastructure. You might want to build an estate, a hybrid application estate. You might want to have some hybrid processes, some running on-premise, some running in a partner. And you might want to do some hybrid sourcing of people, crowdsourcing, or ramping up your staff from an agency whenever you have a particularly busy period of the year. And all of those things are important. But at the same time, there's another kind of integration, which is vertically. So at the end of the day, your business is there to deliver outcomes either to your consumers or your partners. And to do that, you need an integrated stack of infrastructure, software, processes, and people. All of those things come together to deliver your business capability. And so it's really important to think about the outcome that you want and then how you integrate that down the stack to make sure that you deliver it properly. And then even beyond that, which is getting more into the specialization space, once you have put your business capabilities, you've made them consistent, you've made them addressable, then it's all about integration across business capabilities, either within your organization or across organizations. And again, the value of integration increases as you go from left to right. Because in a technical space, that might be helping to improve your internal business capability. If you go across layers, then you are optimizing your business capability. When you go across capabilities, actually you're starting to optimize your business model, because you're taking what you believe you do really well and you're integrating what other people do really well to kind of build a new value chain that is, considerably better than what you could build yourself. So I'm trying to speed up a little bit. So I guess our kind of vision, if you like, is to, I don't know what to call it, but it's almost to create the digital logistics platform. So what we have is business people who have an outcome in mind. They want to have a particular business process. They want to offer an API to a partner so that they can share data. Maybe they do want to design some infrastructure. But in our view, what we're trying to do is integrate all of these things together. So everything that you need to be able to deliver business capabilities, business processes, software and infrastructure, we're integrating all of those things together. We're putting patterns into it, and then we're building modeling languages over the top that make it really easy for people to take their domain knowledge, codify it digitally, build a business model around it, and then distribute it and share that IP with partners. Now that's basically what we're trying to do. And yes, as I say, we have an infrastructure platform. It is useful for certain purposes. But when you look at the bigger picture, I really believe that it's incumbent on all of us to start thinking much bigger. The discussion is so kind of pointless to me at the moment. Like fine, we can have a kind of a shouting match about whose infrastructure is better. But as I say, when you look back at history, I think fundamentally we're at a tipping point to a complete reimagination of the value chain of IT. And so they are the things I think we as a group, Eurocloud, should be addressing. How does the cloud fundamentally transform the way we deliver IT? And how does that in turn lead to all kinds of new benefits to businesses, to society, and to the other one I can't remember, science. There you go. And I mean, just in terms of our platform, I mean, one of the ways that we do this is we've got about 2,500 connectors at the moment that basically allow you to talk to infrastructure platforms, SaaS applications, on-premise systems. And so the whole idea, actually if I skip to the next one, what we want to achieve is a very dynamic and evolutionary way of capturing your business IP. To kind of build it very quickly through modeling languages, just capture your IP in a kind of a higher leverage, more abstract way, integrate it with all of the things that it relies on, so whether that's partners or systems, make sure that you're building that digital supply chain, deploy it, just click a button and it runs. You don't have to worry about configuring everything, it's done, you deploy it. And then finally you run it and you look at reports about how the thing is performing, you see kind of business activity monitoring, you can see KPI information. And through that process, you just continually reiterate, because at the end of the day, when we're not spending 99% of our time coding and configuring technology, we're spending 99% of our time deciding what is it that we need to do, capturing that quickly, executing on it, seeing how it works, and then evolving the business model. That is like transformationally beneficial. And I think this is something, when you look at these sort of ecosystems, they do become very evolutionary. You see changes in one market, and the companies who survive are almost those with the fittest traits, and the fittest traits come from those capabilities that you've integrated, both internally and externally. So if there is a sudden change and somebody becomes much better than you, you can reconfigure your business model to use the services they use and sort of catch up with them. And all of these things require this much more evolutionary approach to business architecture and to the implementation of systems. Okay, so it's just a few examples of things that we've integrated. So I don't want to dwell on this actually, because I think I'm running out of time. Yeah, I am. So suffice this to say that we've done integrations across infrastructure, SaaS processes, and some business capabilities, and delivered out to mobile devices. And we've got some Internet of Things projects we're doing with the EU at the moment to pull all of this together. That's a more interesting one than this actually. So we've got an implementation at the moment which there are a lot of sensors in Geneva. They detect if a person has come into a room. That sends a message to our platform. We check the staff roster, we check the time of day, should there be anybody in that room or not. If there isn't, an alert goes to a security guy who gets a text message and a link to an application that he can open on his phone, and from there he can basically make some decisions. He can see which is the closest person to that room. Does he want to switch the alarm on? Does he want to just say, close the incident, I know what's going on? And you can, even though it's a very simple example that we've built together with our EU partners, it shows you the power of these converged value chains that goes across sensors, it goes into infrastructure, it goes across SaaS platforms, and it pushes it all out to mobile. Yeah, okay. And so just back to the slide really. So our intention is to say, at the moment there's a huge gap between the potential that technology could bring by putting it into the hands of the most people and the technology that we have. And so our ambition is to take all of these diverse technologies, integrate them into a platform, and give people higher leverage tooling that allow them to capture their IP more quickly and to deliver new kinds of business models. And I think that's it. I feel duty-bound, seeing as this was supposed to be Matthew, to put a slide about run my process up at the end. But I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was an angry Welshman. And the great benefit, as far as I'm concerned, is he's right. I feel and have felt for the last 5 years that I've been bombed back into digital caves. People talk about silos. A silo at least gives you a hope that you can connect those silos together. I do feel I'm in a digital cave sometimes. So, no, you are so right. Now, are there any questions for Ian? Over in... Yes.
Wojciech Wirowski, I'm the Data Protection Commissioner in Poland. First of all, thank you for this metaphor to containerization in the maritime transport. I am also of the opinion that even the old IT law is very similar to maritime law in the phases of development. I'm probably a little bit biased by the fact that my wife is dealing with maritime law. But I would like to add one more thing, which is important from the Eurocloud perspective to what you said. Actually, this containerization process has started with the activity of the association or the organization which is quite close to in its structure to Eurocloud. That was International Container Bureau that was established in 1933. But from 1948, it started to be the main place to exchange the ideas about the containerization. And actually it started to be also the platform to create the customary law on containers and the use in maritime transport. And the legal acts on that came as late as in 70s. In 1972, where the first convention on safe containers has been created. So actually this is, of course, in the very short, it's much shorter period of time. This is what will be done with cloud computing. First of all, we will create some customs and some customary law. And if anything will appear, I believe it will not be the law on cloud computing, but if anything appears in the law, it will appear much after the real interoperability of the systems will appear on the market.
No, I agree. And I think I would also caution on that front that there were many attempts. I mean, Malcolm McLean, the guy who popularized the container, there were many attempts before that to introduce the idea, all the way back into the kind of 17 and 1800s. But he was the first person who basically, as a private company, drove it. So he basically implemented the whole supply chain end to end. And the whole standardization process came a lot long after. So there were a few pioneer companies who built this vertical integration across this kind of containerization supply chain and made it work. If they'd started with, let's all sit down and try and plan what this is going to look like, let's do some policies, let's think about what the standards should be, it just would never have happened. You need to, I honestly believe that when you look at these kinds of large-scale disruptions, you need to let the ecosystem evolve, you need to let it do its Darwinian thing, see how things start to emerge, and then look at how do we put policy on top of this and where does standardization come in. And interestingly, the standardization around containerization, it only happened because Malcolm McLean donated the IP around how you attach containers and lift them and put them onto ships, because he could see that that would create a bigger market. And so, I often, when I come to these events, I see, I don't know if this is a kind of a European mainland against an Anglo-Saxon mindset, but I see people immediately stopping everything and saying, we need to have a committee and we need to plan things and we need to make sure that all the policies are in place. And I would urge you, go back, read the history of this stuff and don't do it. Just let it start, see what works, then standardize it. I mean, just to your point, things follow later.